Tournament anxiety never goes away. The best you can hope for is just to learn strategies to cope with it. To that, a critical error in thinking with regard to how to cope with anxiety is that you just need to not be anxious. But what makes us anxious is largely an autonomic nervous response, along with things like your heartbeat and digestion. So unless you can control things like that, then you can't just stop being anxious. Anxiety is probably the single most frustrating issue you can deal with as a player because it is essentially self-sabotage. Anxiety hinders us from achieving the levels of play of which we think we're capable, but the cruel irony is that part of what makes a good competitor, and to that what makes competition such a deeply personal journey that is incomparable to any others in many respects, is the ability to cope with the obstacles that get in the way of winning whatever they may be. For some, these obstacles might be anger, but for many, it's tournament anxiety. As they say, you can't help how you feel, but you can help how you act. With this in mind, we can say that being anxious doesn't mean you're a marionette on the puppet strings of your emotions, but that the psychological discomfort of being anxious creates an intense pressure to find quick relief and travel down the path of least resistance to find that relief. And that path of least resistance is usually opting only for low risk and low execution plays, which at best make you second guess everything you do, and at worst makes you completely impotent. Tournament anxiety is hard to fight in the same way it's hard to fight a sensory illusion. All of those timid and bird brain choices we make when we're anxious seem like the right plays in that moment, but as mentioned, this is because our chief objective when under stress is to find the quickest relief from stress, and taking what seem like extreme risks, but may really be perfectly reasonable risks, is exactly how not to relieve stress, so we avoid it. When you're under the influence of your emotions, these emotional decisions feel right and intuitive, but difficult though it is, we are capable of making decisions based not on what feels like the right thing to do in the moment, but based on what we know we would do under better circumstances. I call these two kinds of thinking synchronous and asynchronous respectively, because the former is based in the moment, so to speak, and the latter is based in reasoning that's independent of temporary fits of emotion. To illustrate what I mean by this, suppose you're lividly pissed, and you just want to go nuclear, slug the shit out of someone, but instead of doing that, you smile and walk away. Your gut feeling was to split somebody's wig, but you saw past the illusion of anger, so to speak, and made a very tough decision that blatantly betrayed what felt right in that moment or yielded to anger. Extending this idea to Smash, think back to a time where you were just a big old bundle of nerves in tournament and consciously avoided plays you'd normally make because you were afraid of screwing up or losing ground. That is, you opted for safe, low execution plays. It's extremely difficult to deliberately make decisions that exacerbate our anxiety or run counter to our need to get away from it because, well, we don't usually make decisions unless they feel right or we're comfortable with them, which is precisely what makes tournament anxiety so perilous. It makes apprehension feel natural and normal. But, just like Harry Potter had to trust that running into a wall at a train station would warp him to Disneyland or whatever instead of killing him, so too should we, in moderation, gather the nerve to see past the spell anxiety puts on our decisions and willingness to take reasonable risks. This can be extended to patience as well. Extreme impatience frequently accompanies anxiety. All we can focus on is alleviating the source of our anxiety and getting whatever is causing it over with, which manifests as short-sightedness. You've probably noticed once or twice that when you're anxious, losing one exchange seems like the end of the world, so in your anxiety-laden stupor, you, to put it the words of a familiar vine,
go crazy, go stupid, ah!
Because, again, we want to escape the anxiety so badly that we seek the shortest route away from it, in this case, attacking rapidly to either bridge our deficit or win the set. I think the most infamous example of this would be Light versus Nairo's Ganon, where Light just stuck to Nairo like body odor because he was racked with nerves. Like I said, we can't just get rid of anxiety, but there is merit in the notion that we can control how it manifests in our decision making. Returning to the sensory illusion comparison I made earlier, I watched a video not too long ago about a girl who suffers from hallucinations, namely clowns. Understandably, this is terrifying, and in one example, she described that sometimes this clown will block doorways. In the spirit of making decisions that require faith in reason rather than what we immediately feel, she said she doesn't wait for the clown to go away, but musters the courage against all the suggestions of her senses to walk past the clown to get to where she needs to go. At the risk of a really awkward turn of phrase, I argue we too should walk past the clown. Of course, this all isn't to say that the caution associated with anxiety is categorically bad. Not the case. Sometimes it is appropriate. But it's important to recognize when it's appropriate to override our anxiety and make, dare I say, courageous decisions to not escape the anxiety, but to put ourselves in the thick of it, accept it, and do those things that one side of us wants least of all to do through the lens of anxiety and nerves, but the other side knows we must, or at least probably should do. So, I think that about covers it. I know turning anxiety is a topic that is pretty near to most of us, so I really hope that the things I talked about in this video either helped or will help you in some way to find your way around this admittedly horrible impediment that gets to so many of us. Thinking in the ways I described will never be something that comes naturally and will always be a skill that we hone over time, and as such, we will naturally fail at it sometimes, if not frequently. But if that happens, don't beat yourself up. We're all human here, except for the YouTube algorithms currently scanning my videos for copyright infringement. Anyway, thank you guys as always for watching. The next SmashConceptions may be a little delayed. I've been on about every other 3-week schedule, because I'll be gone from May 15th until May 22nd to compete at BAM in Australia, so keep an eye out for me there. I'm very anxious about it admittedly, so I guess this particular video was very timely, so we'll see if I can put some of that asynchronous decision making to action. As always, if you'd like to support the channel, you can check out my Patreon, or if you'd just like to hear from me in less formal chunks, you can also check out my Twitter. I'll see you guys later.